How does housing play into inflation? Let's talk about it on Today in Mortgages. Hey, what's up, Dreammakers? Welcome back to the show. We're talking about what's real, what's hype, and what you should actually be paying attention to out there in the world of mortgage and real estate news. It's Today in Mortgage. I got my expert, Rich Jefferson, here with me again today to make all things clear. How you doing, Rich?
Real good, Michael, but I am no expert.
Well, you study this stuff and you know what to talk about. So when someone like Jay Powell, for instance, gets up and does his speech, you know what they're talking about because you studied this, right?
I'm constantly learning. Yesterday wasn't bad. I mean, he did reemphasize, it's higher for longer. They basically took all the extra anticipated, what the markets were anticipating in terms of rate cuts. He took basically wiped those off the board and said, basically, we're going to see one.
Mhm.
Most of the cuts will happen next year, assuming we start to see, some of this inflation reporting really come down as expected. But like he mentioned, hey, we've had, one good one, but
Mhm.
we've got so many bad ones prior to it that doesn't offset the bad ones. It's just one good one. We need to continue to see improvements. And he did hedge, kind of saying, listen, the way we measure it is on a rolling 12. So we had a really bad one 12 months ago. So this new one it made inflation look a little bit better. But the following couple, 10 and 11 months ago, they actually were really good.
Mhm.
So any new reports coming out maybe next month after, they may not look as good as they should because of the way we'd use rolling months to measure it.
Rich, since we here are here to talk about mortgage and real estate, I want to talk about the two questions that were asked of Jay Powell that had to do with housing and inflation after his speech. And so we're going to go through both of those. You ready?
Sure, bring it.
So the first one was a question about the sticky shelter inflation and how that was affecting the overall inflation data. They used a term in there called OER. Can you explain that to us and how that has affected and made that shelter inflation sticky?
30 to 40% of the CPI is shelter. Shelter is a lot of different things, right? It's rent, it's insurances, it's, what are you paying when you're away from home for shelter, like hotels and things when you go on vacation. All of that stuff is calculated into shelter. One of the other items, which isn't mentioned very often, is the owner's equivalent rent of residence. Because there's a lot of homeowners, everybody's situation is different. Everybody's interest rate is different. Their cost of living might be different because they have 3 air conditioners instead of one. So their bills to operate the house might be more. Maybe their insurance is more expensive. So there's no way to really use that measure in the shelter. So what they do is they ask in one of the data inputs that they use, which is called the Consumer Expenditure Survey. This is a survey that they do to households. And if they're a homeowner, they say, what can you rent your home for without furnishings if you moved out and still owned it? So these are okay. So they say, well, based on my neighbors that are renting, they rent for $2,500, so I could rent for $2,500.
It is an interesting thing that a lot of people don't understand that that number comes from survey data, not
Yeah.
necessarily, hey, how much are the averages of all the apartments that are renting for in America? So that's an interesting number. Leading into the second question, on top of that, the very last question that Powell got yesterday was a question basically asking, can cuts come while that housing inflation is still elevated?
Well, again, it just depends on where the economy is. I mean, CPI is one index. It's one report. Like the PPI report came in with a negative number this morning, which is the producer index, so the wholesale side. So there's a lot of factors, but yes, of course. I mean, dropping a Fed funds rate, borrowing doesn't just affect housing; it affects business. It affects our economy because it's obviously less expensive to borrow money to grow your business. If you had to borrow money, it's less expensive on a mortgage payment if you're buying a home. All of that affects. So yes, I believe it's possible. I heard a lot of oscillation. It's hard to really nail him down to a specific, which is understandable.
Right.
They really rely on trends. That's why he said one report doesn't change this. We had 3 bad reports prior to this. So let's see 3 good ones. Then we know we're right. He feels he's right. He's confident that the Fed is doing the right things. It's just taking time.
Right. And all those things, he's basically saying, like, there's no one thing that is going
Yeah.
to determine whether we will or will not raise or lower rates. When we're looking at all this stuff, I think the moral of the story is that we should not be waiting or anticipating for rates to come down before we get out and do our business as loan officers, as real estate professionals. So how are we talking about this, Rich? And if you got anything else to say on this, I'd love to hear it.
Michael, it took a while for things to get where they are, and oftentimes it takes a while to repair that. And that's just where we are. We're in a step in the right direction. I mean, at least they're talking about a full percent cut in 2025. I don't know if you caught that, but they're saying they anticipate 4 cuts next year.
Yeah, definitely good news, Rich, and definitely something to look forward to. But like we said, we are in the now. Doesn't give us an excuse to wait on that. So we got to get out there and hustle. And if you're interested in learning how we are hustling here at the network, click the Grow link below. We'll get you all the information you need to know about being a part of the best network in mortgage, getting coaching and information like this and more every day inside the network. Rich, anything you want to say before we sign off on this?
That's it. Let's take this as a positive and just keep moving forward.
All right. Thanks for making us smart about some of the more intricate ideas within the inflation that has to do with housing. And thanks for helping everyone out there who's watching and listening. Thanks to everyone who is watching and listening out there. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Today in Mortgages. Today in Mortgages is produced by Network Funding LP, which is an equal housing lender, NMLS 2297. The content of this program is meant to be a commentary on mortgage and real estate news, and any discussion of rates and or products should not be taken as an individual mortgage or home buying advice or pricing estimates. And any commentary on this show should not be considered a promise to make a loan. All applicants for a loan must qualify, and you should consult a professional regarding your individual loan scenarios for your financial situation. Visit our website at nflp.com/licenses for all state licensing and other legal information.